Well, good afternoon, everyone. The February 15th Board of Health meeting is now in session. I see we have a quorum present, all physically here for a change. Terrific. Okay, just for the meeting is being recorded visually and audio, so just bear that in mind, please. And now, public comment for any issue that is not on the agenda. Oh, perfect timing.
Thank you, Chairman McNabb. Tobias Glidden, Axmart Solar. I just had a brief public comment. I reached out and I'm realizing that I'm in the wrong room. And so that's terribly embarrassing, but I love the Board of Health. Keep up the great work. And I'm going to go up to the Concom. Thanks so much.
Well, it's our pleasure to see you again.
Now that we said hello.
Actually, I think I'd rather be upstairs. It's going to be a much more exciting meeting.
Oh, geez.
Is it upstairs?
Yeah, they're right upstairs.
Apparently, okay.
Yeah.
And I have two things I wanted to throw out there.
Please, sir.
One is the concept potentially of developing long-term rental guidelines and stuff in terms of inspections of year-round housing. I know it's a huge thing, but reality is that's where our problems come from at the Board of Health, is really substandard living conditions in many cases. So I know it's a warrant article and all that, so if maybe over time we can just throw that out as a point of discussion and something, it's an issue. And then the other was when I'm at the last meeting when we were approving the loans, I thought ran through my head that can we have so 50% non-resident, 100% resident. Can we have resident, not owner occupied at a different rate? Because those are rental units, and just throwing it out there, is there another tier we'd want to throw in there for a resident and not owner occupied?
Resident, non-owner occupied.
Yeah. So it's just, it's something that it's not a crisis or anything, but it was a thought that I thought of it when we did the last meeting.
I mean, doesn't that fall under it's not your primary residence? So if it's not your primary residence, then you only can get a 50% loan? Is that not?
I think it's if you're
So as the way it's set up right now is if it's not owner occupied, we'll only pay up to 50%. What Carrie is saying is, Sean, I'm going to use you as an example. So like if Sean has a house here that he lives in on 20 Nantucket Road, but he also owns 22 Nantucket Road, but that 22 Nantucket Road needs a new septic, can we cover 75% of that rather than the 50? Am I getting that correct?
No, the other direction.
Oh,
You wanted them both 50%.
No. The way that my understanding has been, if you're a Nantucket resident, 100%.
Yes,
If you're a non-Nantucket resident, own your property is 50%.
right.
If you're a Nantucket resident but don't live in the house that is being upgraded, and that's where I'm putting that other one in. That it's not, it wouldn't be 100%, but it would be 75%, or to some other fraction.
Does the state have any say in what we do with the money
No.
So
as long as it's
entirely up to us.
as long as it's used for the installation of an IA septic system, they don't care how we allocate that money.
I mean, I don't think it's something, I'm throwing it out there as
All right,
something
well,
for future.
we have to, because it's not on the agenda.
It's not
so
on
we
the
can't-
agenda
we
to
can't-
re-examine,
We can't
you know.
discuss it, but you can bring it up as a point to be considered down the road, and
Yeah,
maybe at some point we'll put it on the agenda for a formal
yeah.
discussion.
That's all.
So Carrie, what you're saying is,
We can't really discuss it. We can
we just clarify what is?
We can
what
clarify
even
what he's saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I hear him saying is that if you are a Nantucket resident, but you are looking to upgrade your septic on not your primary residence,
Mhm.
we should consider that differently.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to
Right,
make,
well, we will, we'll put it on a future agenda. If you could mark it down for,
Yeah, we could
not
put that on.
maybe after March 14th or.
Yeah. Everything
Well, no
after March
matter what, the
14th.
next Board of Health meeting is after March 14th. So this is my last
He's a
Board of Health
sly,
meeting.
he's a sly one. Okay, approval of the minutes. I couldn't find minutes in the package.
ever?
Did we not put the minutes in the package?
They weren't there.
Okay, so we'll
Next
can
time,
skip it and
please.
we'll get that on the next one. I'll make sure that they get before I head out to the process together.
Speaking of loans, we have betterment loans. First one is 43 Ridge Lane.
Yes. There was only one that's an issue that we're running into. So with 43 Ridge Lane, I don't believe we have any objection to it.
43, any comments? Anyone speaking on it? Do we hear a motion?
Motion to approve 43 Ridge Lane.
Second.
Any further
Approval.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Loan is granted. 10 Jonathan Way.
Yes. So with 10 Jonathan Way, unfortunately, this is one of those that technically don't qualify for the loan. The person did apply, so we do have to have the hearing. But it is a property that's outside of any of our nitrogen sensitive areas, and it's for new construction, which we've never covered before. So it technically does not qualify for the loan.
Yeah, so it doesn't qualify by our criteria.
Yeah.
Any questions? Do I hear a motion to deny it?
Motion to deny.
Further discussion? All in favor of denying that loan application for 10 Jonathan Way, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman says aye, that's denied. 53 Millbrook.
Yeah, this is another one that we did not have a problem with.
Any questions, any discussion? Do I hear a motion? Motion to approve, anyone?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the loan for 53 Millbrook, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That is also approved. Variance request for bathroom in Cisco Beach.
Yes, so at Cisco Beach, and Eleanor is here representing the land bank. Over the course of the last few years, the food code has changed since 2019. So we do have mobile food units at the Cisco Beach area, and the land bank is requesting, what ended up happening was after the COVID hiatus, we kind of came down on all of the mobile food units across the island that had been kind of skirting this new rule about hand washing sinks and access to a bathroom. So the rule is that a mobile food unit, no matter where they are, must have access to restrooms, so that and hot water hand washing outside of the food prep area. Cisco Beach is a tough location. So last year, the compromise was to allow them to be active at Cisco Beach for two hours at a time. But moving forward, we're looking to be able to have access to that hand washing sink. And Eleanor is here on behalf of Land Bank for clarification.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? I know sometimes this mic doesn't always work so well for the.
Get a little
watching on-
closer, but we can hear it.
Is that good?
Yeah.
I forgot my assistance.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So I will admit that I had to familiarize myself with the mobile MFE retail food code and the food code and local regulations very rapidly when we decided to submit this variance request after discussion with Roberto, who helped us on, me and Jesse, who is the executive director of the Land Bank, better understand what would be required. There is really no remote possibility due to the environmental constraints of installing a quote-unquote brick and mortar establishment here to meet the requirements. So after a little bit of due diligence, as much as I had time to do, to be honest, and I really threw the proverbial kitchen sink at you in my narrative, because looking again at the code and the things that I was able to study and brush up on, I was frankly a little bit confused walking away from it, because there seemed to be things that overlap, or I'm not an expert. So I was a little mystified by some of the things, but so I really put a lot in the narrative because I'm not exactly sure which will apply in terms of the specific waiver. However, that said, one of the suggestions that came to us was to have this portable sink, which would have a power source that could have, would heat the elements up to the required, I believe it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken, what I remember. And so we'd have a power source. It would likely be a generator. I did check in with Wanacomment. They're kind enough to say we could tap into the water fountain at the end of the bike path. So we would figure out either we would trench in the disturbed area of the road if we are able to do that, or worst case scenario, have a literal hose with PVC piping to protect it to the unit. I did include a sample of a unit in my narrative, but there are other options. That is one that we could put in a shed to protect it from public access and make sure it's only the vendors that have access to it. The other one that came to my attention was we have a couple of field crew who are wildland firefighters, and they pointed out something that's literally a trailer, and I brought some photos of that, which I found out about today. That is a much more involved and expensive unit, but it can be taken to and from. If you'd like, I can hand these out. I don't know if it will be. Would you please? Sure. There's both sides have specs. That is, again, a much more comprehensive unit. It's got multiple stations. That's one sample. I haven't had time, honestly, to look into if there are small, there have to be smaller units, but that's one idea. One that we could leave on site for the week and take off on the weekends or something. I mean, we would have to deal with, there's a number of logistics that would have to be dealt with, and I would be more than happy to work with public health staff to figure out the logistics of it. So that's one option. But again, we do have a water source, an available water source. The other option is to literally refill the tanks. You have your gray water and your clean water tanks. But all of these units, there are multiple choices that I found. Some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. This is our hope to be able to work around, because these mobile food units, people who go to that beach have come to rely on them, and they really enjoy them. In addition, we are looking to expand, as I mentioned in the narrative, the parking lot because of the loss of spaces on the bluff, as you all are no doubt aware. We have been looking at those probabilities for years now. We're now actively applying for a permit to install, potentially, pending this permit being approved by NHESP, install an alternative parking lot to get cars off the road, and also to make up for the loss of about 12 spaces. But the vendors, if we're allowed to have them continue to exist in this seasonal capacity, would continue to be in the main parking lot area, and we would install the portable sink within close proximity, whatever that distance would need to be. The thought was in the corner near the end of the bike path. So that is what I have to offer you. I'm not sure I'm well versed enough in the code to maybe rebut anything, but I will do my best, and I'm hopeful that we can work something out with me working with the staff on the logistics of it. Sure.
Hi, I'm Sean Reed, health inspector. I think our biggest concern is the porta potties themselves. They're not as sanitary as a brick and mortar bathroom. The food code states that bathrooms need to have a hand sink inside or directly adjacent to. However, there are mobile restrooms available that are a little bit more sanitary and able to be cleaned than a porta potty. we are concerned about food safety and employees using a porta potty and then cleaning their hands afterwards and then returning to the mobile unit to prepare food. Porta potties can't be sanitized or cleaned. So I think we're hoping for at least some type of mobile restroom that may or may not have a hand sink inside, but would need one directly next to it if that's what they decided to use. Just like a brick and mortar needs a restroom available with a hand sink, either inside or directly outside of it. As that's the same for the situation with the mobile units at Cisco Beach. It's not a temporary event. So at Cisco Beach, it's considered a seasonal event now. And the mobile units stay there for longer than 2 hours. They stay there for the whole day. So that's what we're hoping to get. We're happy to work with the land bank.
Comments from the board, questions?
May I add something just to piggyback on what, sorry to interrupt through you, Mr. Chair. I didn't address the idea of a portable bathroom. I actually, we did discuss that
Yeah, we
with
discussed-
Roberto, and we were kind of focused on the sink, so that's my probably oversight, not to have, I didn't realize the porta potty was the issue. I thought the issue was being able to wash your hands after going to the porta potty. So, but if we need to look into a full-on, I mean, I've seen them at big events and weddings and so forth, these rather fancy portable trailer. I mean, it's an expense we have to look into. We might need to talk to the town administration about cost sharing, but that's another issue that's on us. But I'm certainly willing to do additional due diligence on that aspect of things. I mean, that is something that I thought about. I just didn't realize that was going to need to be dealt with as well.
So none of the stuff was in the packet.
It was emailed after. They were
Yeah.
all,
I don't think I got any of that.
Okay. But either way,
Huh?
either way, it's
I don't
exactly
know
what
if I can
Eleanor
hear.
just mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay, it just
So-
would have been nice to have read it before.
Yeah, no,
Now.
understood.
That's,
Understood. We'll record.
Heather was very patient with me. I got the application in the time for the posting and then the remaining materials by the end of the day, because I had to do some research. And I didn't want to give her something sloppy. So I took basically the entire afternoon to get a better grip on things, my best possible grip. And I sent it to her at the end of the day when she was gone by that time. So this is more
Yeah.
bad timing.
No worries.
I'm sorry you didn't get it.
No worries.
Let's go as far as we can. with comments from the board.
Well, the Dreamland Drive-In had used the porta, the full unit with the sink and restroom. And I know they used that for when they had to drive in. I guess they still use it now, but that's where I'd seen the portable bathroom. Yeah, a full unit with sinks, restrooms, and so, I don't know if they owned it or rented it, but it has been used on island, and it seemed it was good. It was a sanitary and it's much higher quality than the Cisco Brewery porta potties.
and they could be, the thing is they also can be cobbled together. So you can get an upgraded portable toilet, and then also have these sinks immediately adjacent to it. So like that is also allowed in the code. So I think the comments that I have here from John, the concern is that he has is that it's your standard porta potty isn't something that's easily cleanable. So it would be good to have whatever is proposed, something that has a cleaning schedule and a pumping contract. So that's really what is looking for, something that is easily cleanable, sanitary, with a hand sink next to it, is really the access.
Sorry.
I got a simple question. Can they do everything you want?
Wow.
That
Loaded question.
that you would be satisfied with?
A mobile trailer.
For what you're looking for,
Mhm.
what they don't have right now,
Mhm.
can they agree to have everything that you want to satisfy you?
So right now, the mobile units, most mobile units have a hand sink available in the mobile unit.
Yep.
But unfortunately, that hand sink is for use for food preparation and not to wash your hands after using the restroom.
Okay, my question is, can they satisfy you? Can they make something to let you agree?
Yeah,
Did
I think the staff is happy to work with the land bank to
Well-
come up with some agreement.
Well, I suggest that that's what they do.
May I ask, would it be possible or acceptable for us to restrict it to the vendors? Because the minute we start opening this up to the public, we're gonna have diapers, we're gonna have God only knows what, and we're gonna have to refill those tanks. I don't even know how often.
Yeah.
That's a huge onus on our crew and financially as well. So I'd like to be able to, if I can find a unit to rent or purchase, potentially working with the town, restrict it to the vendors.
I think that's probably what we would have to agree on unless they had multiple ones available for the public. But what we run into is members of the public will be knocking on the door, like hoping to use it all the time because it's a nicer, it's something more approachable than a porta potty for the beach.
We'd lock it. We'd have to lock it or have some sort of a
Yeah.
code that only the vendors had access to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting a sense here that you're not, let me speak for the board and interrupt me if I'm wrong, that we should really come back with a very specific proposal. Because we will, we talked options here, and I don't like to vote on if, maybe, what if.
Right. I
Mhm.
believe everything should be on a level playing field between all these things.
Yeah.
So I think I would recommend that you work together and come out something that she's satisfied with and that you're satisfied with.
I think the staff is happy to.
And just come back here next month with, something, all the specifics, what it's gonna be, what are the rules about it, and who's responsible to clean it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, okay. I can do that.
Okay?
No problem. So to table to whatever your March meeting is?
The third Thursday.
Third Thursday of March, which is
It's 4 weeks.
21st.
Okay,
The 21st of March.
no problem.
That should give you enough time to get something together and enough time to get it set for the season.
Sure, and I'll set up a time to meet with you, Sean, and
Sure,
we'll work together. You can help me, I can help you.
happy to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
No air occupancy earlier, 33 over there.
Yes, so this is an interesting situation. So what we're running into is this is a property that has various violations that need to be corrected. And once the property owner specifically received the violation order, simply said that I'm just not gonna rent it out and I'm not gonna fix it. There's this little known part in the housing code that allows us to put in a no reoccupation, which is similar to like what we do when we condemn, where we do a condemnation, we placard it and say, you're done until all things get fixed. But condemnations only happen when it's actually inhabited. This is a preemptive condemnation. No one can live there until all violations are taken care of.
And will we know that's gonna happen?
It's unfortunately what runs the way it happens is sometimes it does get places get reoccupied, in which case we have to show back up, we can actually condemn at that point, and then what we can also do is get a court order to require it, and then we can physically lock it ourselves with our own lock and key.
Can we get the owner of that to sign a statement saying that he will not rent it from now on?
No, this is a vote of the board from the housing, on the housing code. It has nothing to do with the landlord signing into an agreement at all. This
No,
is
but what
us
I'm saying
imposing
is,
that.
He said he wasn't gonna fix it.
Correct,
So basically, we're gonna condemn it so that you can't use it.
correct.
So what if they turn around and stop renting it? We have to
Then
go through the same thing time
We
after
would have to
time?
take them to court at that point if they rent it again to get a permanent injunction, which we've done before.
Okay. Questions from the board?
What are the options?
The options is
I'm kind of looking at
the option is if we do nothing, they may rent it again, and then we're back with a substandard housing situation, and we start from zero. The no reoccupation is at least a line in the sand that if they do reoccupy it, they are now in criminal violation, because the housing code goes by criminal standards, not civil.
Okay.
Let me ask you another question. Of the things that are wrong with that, things that they need in order to be rentable,
Oh, yes,
well, then why don't we just condemn it now?
because it's no longer occupied. It's not going to be occupied as of
So
this coming
why-
week.
Why don't we condemn it and say no one can occupy it now further till all these things?
Because a condemnation requires it to be occupied. It's a different legal standard.
So the owner says they are unwilling to repair the violations.
Correct.
So we're saying, then you can't put anybody in it.
Correct.
And how do we know that they aren't going to put anyone in it? I mean, do you guys have
Yeah,
like
how do we
a
give that
plan to
teeth?
recheck or?
To be fair, it's in a very prominent location. It's hard to miss. We can continue to check on it, but anytime you drive up and down Nobody Road, you will see the house. So if it is occupied, the health department staff would notice.
Yeah, but you know, that puts the onus on us to make sure we're driving by to make sure this guy, I don't agree with that. I think we ought to condemn the thing right now.
We can't.
We can't.
We can't.
It's a different legal standard altogether. We can't. If we condemn it now and they fight it, if they take us to court about it, we will lose that.
This is our only option is to do nothing or to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Doing nothing is not serving the community.
Correct.
You have a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. I'm Sean Reed for the health department. I was at the inspection with Inspector Jake Visco for this property, and just to provide some context, the floor in this building is unfinished cement, similar to what you would find in a garage. And there was no smoke detectors, just carbon monoxide alarms, and there's no oven provided to the tenants for cooking. So, we communicated with the owner, and the owner stated that they were willing to fix some things, but not all. So this is a means for us to say, you won't be able to rent or occupy the building until everything that we're requiring to be fixed is fixed.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, Mr. Cooper, I don't know if there's a great way for us to tell if people are there or not. But like Roberto said, it is in a prominent location that we often drive by on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah. And none of the violations would raise up to what we would call imminent hazard, which we, like, for example, last month, we condemned a home out in Nantucket where the windows were broken, the roof, you can see the outside from inside the building through the wall. No, it's not like that either. It's just there are serious enough violations that if it was occupied for living, then we have a problem. If it was used as a warehouse, there's nothing wrong with that.
If they chose to fix stuff just eventually down the road, I'm assuming they got to come back to us to say we
Correct.
did it
Correct.
and not just say, well, we fixed it and let's rent it out. So,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so do I have a motion to confirm the no rent and no occupancy order for 43 Overton, Nobody Return?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Second.
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Order is confirmed. Emergency condemnation to ratify the house at 7 Lily Street.
So this one is an interesting situation. This one is the oil tank burst, and there was a large oil spill in the property. So there's VOCs in the property and things like that. It has to be cleaned up. Once I know the cleanup is happening right now. Once the cleanup is completed, all we need to do is re-inspect it to lift the condemnation. It has to be condemned because it is unlivable from a very dangerous standpoint. but we can just lift the condemnation once everything gets cleaned up
Was the tank inside or outside?
inside.
Inside?
Were people living there when this happened?
That I don't know. Yeah, that I
So
don't know.
Isn't it the same thing? if
Imminent
nobody
hazard.
was living there?
It's to my knowledge, it's a seasonal, so it is considered inactive use. This one is, the previous one is not.
Okay.
But yeah, this one we have when you have a imminent hazard like VOCs or oil or something like that, that one is also danger to the building itself. This one probably should have gone to another department as well, but that department's not going to enforce the request. So it falls onto the housing code to do it.
Any other questions?
So we'd be, according to the form, so the house to be condemned, this would be a condemnation.
Correct.
And
Until-
again, once they correct it and clean up
Yeah,
and
to make it
get
livable.
everything. Quick question. The tanks outside the house with the hoses, was that for the cleanup or was that for something else? It was a very interesting setup.
When you
on
say the
on the
tanks,
photos.
when you
There were
say the
big-
tanks outside,
Big white tanks outside with hoses running through the window,
I have to pull up
going somewhere.
I have to pull up a packet. Give me just a second. My apologies.
And I was just, and again, I wasn't sure if the house was being lived in or not, if that was a water, but there's two big white tanks.
Yeah, Sean,
to
can
chain
you
link,
handle this because I have to
stuff.
go through the packet here just a second.
Yeah, the tanks are for containment. So, the oil system was in the basement,
Yeah.
and to pump that up, it needs to stay contained. And so those tanks were provided to, like I said, as
Okay.
a containment.
That's part of the cleanup process is those tanks. then.
You also see in the photos, the white pads there, and that's to soak up the oil as much
Yeah.
as possible.
Okay.
We were there and there was a oil sheen on the top layer, obviously, in the basement floor. So Inspector Visco and I were there when the fire department was there, and kind of saw this, and they were communicating with the oil company as it was happening, basically.
Yeah, those now that I'm seeing the picture, those tanks are carboys for DOT. They're DOT approved carboys to be able to
Okay.
transport these sorts of flammable materials.
Okay, I just wasn't sure, where they fit into the process.
Yeah. So in the black underneath the white carboy that you see, that's actually that you move it with a pallet. That's where the pallet forks go through, and then you load it onto a truck for a DOT rated truck for this.
And is the owner cooperating?
Yes.
Okay,
So that's my question. If they are in the process of rectifying this, they've got, the proper people on site to do it. Is condemning, maybe I don't understand, but it feels like condemning is kind of a harsh thing. Can't we work with them to let them complete it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So what ended up happening is there's an immediate condemnation that ends up happening in the field. When things get cleaned up before a Board of Health meeting, sometimes you never see it, because it is considered that an emergency condemnation, and then the issue that comes up that caused the emergency is no longer causing it. So for example, like an oil spill that were to happen, we'll say tomorrow, and then gets cleaned up by February 30th, or February 30th, yes, February 29th in this case. That would never make it to a Board of Health meeting, but when it is an ongoing issue, we do need to get the ratification from the board.
How did we find out?
How did we find out? It was reported to us. Dispatch called us.
So is the issue that it's just not cleaned up yet?
It's not cleaned up yet.
Okay.
It's not, we haven't done the re-inspection to confirm that it's fully cleaned up yet. And the LSP hasn't notified us that it's been completely done yet.
If there are no further questions, may I hear a motion to ratify the emergency condemnation of the house at 7 Lily Street?
Yes.
Go with somebody, I can.
I don't want to condemn it. If the work is going on now.
Well, we still have to
That's
vote
happened-
one way or the other.
That's happened to me with some of my clients.
Well, someone can make a motion to condemn it, and someone can make a motion to deny the condemnation, and then we'll vote and see how it goes.
What if we
Hmm?
Either way, Ed brings up a great point. Either way is.
Yeah,
So I guess my question is are things happening? Like, is it just not cleaned up yet?
It's just
Or-
not completed. The process is not completed.
But it is, I mean, I guess,
Is it ongoing?
Yes.
I feel like this could happen to any of us.
Yeah.
Could. I
Um,
make a motion to deny.
okay, that's fine.
It's just so it's known that it's not habitable while the work is being completed.
Well, it can't be. It
Well-
can't be. If the oil tank's gone, the furnace can't run. If the furnace can't run, they can't live in the
Right,
house.
we have,
That's why the
That's-
emergency
Hence the
condemnation,
condemnation, because it's an unlivable home.
because there's no heat,
So
water.
We don't have to condemn it because the house can't be lived in anyway.
right,
We do come across properties
Mhm.
where people are living in houses with no heat. So I think it's a formality
people?
to, no, we won't, I don't think we expect people to live in the property.
just administratively, I have the sense the board is not going to condemn this. So we can, if we did not, we have to vote, yes?
Yes.
So we may, there's a motion on the floor to not condemn the property. So then we'll have a second and we'll vote on it. If there's no second, we can't vote on it. Is there a second that we're not going to condemn the property?
second.
All right, any further discussion? So the motion is not to condemn.
so can I ask a question?
Go right ahead.
If we vote to not to condemn, is that setting a precedent? Because I know that these people may not be living in this house because they don't live here and doesn't sound like they rent their house. This is just a bad thing that happened, bad luck. But are we putting ourselves in a position to not condemn other places where we have families living in homes without heat and water? And because we said, well, we're not going to condemn this house because they're working on it, then we can't condemn other homes? I mean, does this have a ripple effect?
Every situation is independent. Regardless, there are hundreds of reasons on why we can condemn and not condemn. Choosing to condemn this one or not condemning this one will not have any effect on any future condemnation or non-condemnation. Just it'll, more than anything, it'll send a message to the staff as to what rises to a level of a Board of Health level condemnation.
I mean, I understand they are working on it, and it probably takes a lot of time to clean this up at this time of year. So I appreciate that, but I also feel like we don't want there to be an idea that someone could, I mean, an oil spill is not, no smoke detectors.
And this is
Like,
a big oil spill.
an oil spill is not having a cement floor. Like, this is a bigger
Yes.
deal than some of the other things. And I guess, is there a downside to condemning it? Like, it doesn't hurt their property, or it doesn't,
It's not a
because it will
permanent
go
record.
away as soon as the oil spill is cleaned up.
Yeah, it's not
just
a
when it
permanent.
happens.
Yeah,
Correct. It's not a permanent record. It does not damage their property value, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
It is more a declaration of inhabitability until the issues are rectified. The reason it's such a big deal in this case is it was a significant amount of oil, and some of it did get absorbed by the property itself. That's why it's an ongoing issue.
Who's doing the inspection about the oil? I mean, we can sit there and say the power's on, the water's on, but the oil, is that us or is
That
that
is-
an EPA type kind of organization?
Correct. The Mass Department of Environmental Protection created a program called the Licensed Site Professional, the LSP. LSPs oversee hazardous material pickup and cleanup and transportation. So so they handle everything from the beginning of the RCRA process. I forgot what RCRA stands for. And they hand it over, once they sign the chain of custody form to hand it over to the transportation, the LSP's job is done. The LSP, all their responsibility is to make sure that the property meets the hazardous material standard. Once the cleanup is done, they report it to us and they report it to the DEP.
So if any oil is absorbed into the concrete floor of the basement, does
They
that present a potential long-term problem in terms
they
of?
oversee the cleanup because that is when it comes to heating oil, it's actually pretty hazardous type of oil to the environment.
Yeah.
So the LSP is responsible to make sure that all of it gets cleaned up, including what got absorbed into the concrete, which means we're probably going to be hearing jackhammers.
Yeah. So my concern would be, since we're not the only entity involved in making this house habitable, that, that condemnation may be appropriate. Because, this is not just a quick little fix. I mean, we have professionals coming in doing and they may have to scrape the concrete floor, get everything out of there, and then they can do other things,
And
put power back on, so.
Who's to say that if we don't condemn it, and I don't, and the owners want to use the house in the summer and it's still not cleaned up, we haven't condemned it, so people
They can
can
use
use
it.
it.
Let me ask you one other question. The people don't live in there now. They're not living in the house now.
They use it intermittently throughout the year.
Excuse me?
They use it intermittently throughout the year. So like when we were there, they weren't there, but doesn't mean that they weren't going to be here during spring break.
Oh, I
For
thought they
example.
were out of the house. They weren't living there while the work was going
Yeah.
on.
They're not there while the work is going on because there's no heat or hot water.
Do they have any, do they care whether we condemn it or not?
I haven't heard anything
Well,
otherwise.
I mean,
They haven't mentioned anything to us.
No,
They didn't.
We haven't heard anything from the owners as far as like negatively about the condemnation. It's really, and I believe it's a second or third home that the owners
Yeah.
own, not, and they live somewhere else. So I just think it's really for the fact that, in February break, they can't come and stay in their home because there's no heat or water.
But it
That's
sounds
really
like
what
this
it's
could
about.
take a while to clean up, so July 4th, they may not be able to come and use their home. But if we,
Usually these sorts of cleanups happen quickly because of the
Okay.
nature of it.
Okay.
It's a flammable fuel.
Okay.
So the LSPs, I don't remember who the cleanup company was. I think it was Clean Harbors, but I'm not sure. They respond pretty fast. What ends up happening is they, on a floor like this, usually what happens is they strip up all the floor, they remove to where the contamination happened, and then they leave. They leave it as is. So it can be completely destroyed or it can just be ugly. Doesn't mean it's uninhabitable if it's ugly. So what needs to happen before the building is habitable, though, is they need a new tank, new oil, and the furnace needs to be fired back up.
Okay,
all
so
right. I'll
So
withdraw my-
one last question. If any of us had a disaster of any kind in our house that kept the house from being livable, would the Board of Health condemn our house?
Theoretically, yes, it can.
Okay, I just needed to get that clear because I'm not sure that any of us realize that.
okay, so
Can I make a comment?
one more comment, then we'll move on.
Typically, like in a condemnation with the occupants would be staying in a hotel or somewhere else while
Yeah, they
like,
get displaced.
while the repairs or whatever needed to happen take place.
Yeah.
Okay, so James has withdrawn his nomination. Motion.
Can I
No,
withdraw my,
Yes, you can withdraw.
I'll withdraw.
It is withdrawn. So we need another motion. It could be the same motion, or it could be a motion to ratify the condemnation of 7 Lily Street.
Well, make a motion to ratify the condemnation of 7 Lily
Do we
Street.
hear a second?
second,
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Chairman says aye.
I'm abstaining.
And one abstention. Fine. It is approved by 4 votes and 1 abstention. '74 Arkansas septic setback variance.
Yes, so I know Don is here in case for any questions. This is one of those situations from the Tristram's condos where it's those small little lots that have the septic systems on them, and as they fail, the new septic systems would require setback variances. We've done this many times before. I know in your packet it says that that the building sewer needs to be relocated just to be on the property. I think Don is here to confirm that it can be done, and then other than that, we have no concerns.
All right. You have any comments on that, Don?
Yeah, exactly. Like Roberto said, we will revise the plan to move the sewer line over. That was an oversight on our part. The existing system is too close to the groundwater, so the IEA will have a pump system component to achieve that. The variances that we are asking for to the wells, we are improving the setback distance from what's existing. I think the other important thing to note is that the groundwater is flowing in, southerly away from the wells that we're asking the variances for.
Questions or comments from the board?
No, I know that I live out in the townhouses. I mean, this is all part of the juggling we do out there to try to move our stuff around.
It's a big juggle.
It's a tough location.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept the variance for 74 Arkansas.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? Okay, so all in favor of accepting the variance for 74 Arkansas? So aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Septic, we have another variance, 14 to 16 Sheep Pond Road. Septic setbacks for Nantucket regulation.
This one's a tough one. And Don is also here for the client. This is a bedroom system there's a 3-bedroom system that's being moved up to a 9-bedroom system out in Sheep Pond Road. What it really comes down to is that this falls under new construction. And as a new construction definition, we require that it meets all the Title V regulations if it can. So that's why the recommendation in the packet says deny, but I know Don is also here to clarify.
Yes, so this property actually consists of 2 lots in the same ownership, 14 and 16. Number 16, the house is very close to the edge of the eroding bluff, so that's actually being removed, and that septic system is being removed with it. So there will be proposed construction of a 3-bedroom house in place of the existing 3-bedroom house at number 14, and then new construction for a 6-bedroom main house. So this design does meet all Title V requirements. So the variances that we were asking for are 2 variances under the Nantucket regulations. The first one is the setback variance. As we know in Nantucket, there's a 50-foot setback variance, 50-foot setback requirement to leaching system from property lines. I actually noticed getting ready for this meeting that, we asked for a 39-foot variance. It's actually only 15 feet in this case because it's actually measured from the other side of the roadway. So, and the other thing we'd like to point out is on the other side of the roadway, that land is vacant. It's owned by the Conservation Foundation Land Trust, and so that will never be built on. So there won't be any impact as a result of granting that variance to the lot line. And still not exactly sure, as we've talked about before, how the 50-foot regulation came into effect. And as far as granting that variance, we don't see any threat to public health or the environment. The other variance we're requesting is, again, a Nantucket variance that requires a 150-foot setback to a well. We're proposing 122 feet. Again, I believe that 150 was probably, my guess, is one of the original regulations written possibly before we had groundwater flow maps. And in this case, if you look at the plan, you can see that clearly the area under the septic system, the groundwater is flowing toward the ocean and not toward the well. Again, it meets Title V. Now, could we have designed a system to meet the 150-foot setback and the 50-foot property line setback? Probably, and still make this work. But, we felt that in this case, because the existing 3-bedroom septic system is fairly new, only installed in 2019, that the most efficient way to do this would be to expand what's already there. And so that's basically how we came up with this plan. And we feel pretty strongly that, the granting of these variances will not, as I said, will not create any issues with groundwater contamination and will not affect any abutters. And especially since the variance to the well is to our own well. So we hope that you'll consider those factors in issuing these variances. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll start.
Go ahead. Questions?
First, in the Sheep Pond Road, so is that the ocean on the other side?
It's the ocean to the south.
Yes, and I mean, we're losing a lot of South Shore ocean really fast, and that, there's lines they show. So is there any kind of issue with the coastal erosion that seems to be accelerating? We've already lost some properties on Sheep Pond up that area earlier in the year. So I have that. And I guess my other is my normal, when I see these, is going from 3 to 9 and saying because we did good nitrogen loading that we can do that. That's just, you probably hear me at every meeting say that, because I don't think the mathematics on that doesn't hold up for me in the long run. So I'm concerned about the proximity to the ocean. I am concerned about the 3 to 9 bedroom, and also it's supposed to fall under new construction regulations.
I would be concerned about putting anything right there with how close it is to the ocean. When you look at the GIS probably gives them some land, and it still looks awfully close to the water to be putting a septic system.
Yeah.
Other comments? Is this?
I could just point out a couple of things to address those comments. So where the expansion is taking place, it's about 200 feet from where we last located the top of the coastal bank, which was in December. And you are right, it's creeping more and more. Almost to that point, getting it further from the coastal bank and toward the property line further justifies at least that variance toward the property line. Again, anybody that builds out here, as we all know, is doing it, at their own risk. It's just going to have to be, a matter of time before they may have to make further adjustments. It's almost similar to what I described first, the house on number 16, which its life expectancy has ended, and therefore it's being removed along with the septic system. Someday, maybe in our lifetime, maybe not, the same thing will have to happen with these proposed structures. But I think those issues, should be considered separate from, what we're asking for today as far as these variances go and how they relate, to public health and the environment.
My question is, will that road still be there? I mean, there's a lot of discussion about redoing, moving roads and so forth in that area. I mean, I'm sorry I didn't get into that, but it just occurred to me that we've been talking about, it's almost like Baxter Road.
It's a good question. I think the difference between Sheep Pond and Baxter is Baxter has an entire line of houses on the ocean side, whereas Sheep Pond is very zigzagged.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of discussion about redoing that.
Absolutely.
So is this house in the middle of the new road?
No, it is adjacent to the road, but it is adjacent to the dune. It's a hard question to answer about whether the road is going to be there or not. If we were to create, it brings up a good point. We don't have a policy on proximity to dunes other than straight Title V. We don't have policy on erosion rates either. This one just kind of in this moment, kind of opening my eyes into, we should probably work with the Natural Resources Department to do an average erosion rate calculation for future septic systems. We won't be able to make it bear on this one, but
I mean, I feel
Future choices.
negligent that I didn't really look at those plans, how this fits into the potential new neighborhood.
And I think, yes, they're doing it at their risk, but it's also at the risk of all of us, because if the septic ends up eroding into the ocean, I mean, that's gonna affect a 3-bedroom versus a 9-bedroom is a big,
Well-
I would, a significant difference. Am I understanding that correctly? Like a 9-bedroom is gonna be pretty large.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but as far as that concerned, the house is between the septic system and the ocean. So it would have to be abandoned long before there was any risk of the septic system, going into the bank or eroding toward the bank.
Well, we
Um,
just condemned 1, 2, or 3 meetings ago, the one that suddenly and the tank was exposed.
Yes.
And, I mean, that was rather sudden. I don't think people expect it to happen quite this year, maybe 2 or 3 years from now, but it happens. I mean, the erosion is not predictable, and I'm concerned about that.
There's several variances there that they're asking for, not plus it's new construction.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, that's really the
You
variance.
can't put that in the corner.
Yeah.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I'd like to reiterate the staff recommendation to deny the variance. Because the engineer, stated that it is possible to design the system that meets all Title V and local regulations. It would just be more difficult for them to do that.
So if we deny this variance, they can go back to the table and come up with something that'll be totally compliant to Title V. I mean, our other issues aren't the issue for here. This is, the variance request is to bend the Title V regulations. Don had mentioned that they could go back to the drawing board and make it compliant under Title V.
So if I could just clarify that, again, we're not asking for any Title V variances. We're only asking to the local Nantucket regulations, which, by the way, past history, in most situations where it didn't affect in a butter, you'll see almost all the permits that I'm familiar with have been approved, as long as an abutter wasn't being affected. So this application, I don't think, is much different than many others that have been approved, by the board, not necessarily by the board, but mostly by the staff. So. In fairness to my own client, I can understand we don't meet the regulations, but that's why I try to put it in context that, these regulations really, don't protect anything. They're old regulations that maybe were political at one time. And so it just doesn't seem, from an engineering or a common sense standpoint, it doesn't seem reasonable to have to rip out the system that's there and design a whole new system, when the system that we've designed protects the public health and in the water quality of mainly only our lot, because we're the only lot in this whole area that's even affected by it.
Other comments? Very quiet. Okay, well, I'm concerned. There's a lot of objections here and more concerns. And I don't know how it fits into and again, I'm sorry I didn't look at the proposed new plans for that area. So.
I wouldn't have any problem asking for a continuance so everyone can look at the plans and we can come back next time. And if, in the meantime, people want to look closer at the erosion issues and maybe future policies, we're fine with that. I'd rather have everybody be comfortable making a decision either way on this. But and the last thing I'd like to point out, as far as access, over the last 15 years or so, there's been a lot of issues with the access. And that's been pretty firmed up at this point the access to this property, if the access from the east becomes impassable, there's clear access that goes to the northwest of the site. So I would respectfully request that we continue this and everyone have a little more time, to look at the plans and study it.
I have no problem with a continuance.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
Yeah, make a motion for that.
Motion to continue 14 to 16 Sheep Pond Road.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We'll talk about this next month.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Septic variance for general construction for 196 Summit Pond Road.
This is also a tough situation where what we're seeing here is there's a property that had some construction done on it, but due to the removal of a retaining wall, the 36-inch soil barrier that's above the septic system is not maintained. So I believe Mr. Obrez is here as the applicant, and I think Jeff is also here as the engineer to speak on this variance.
Hello, can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
Hi there. My name is Jason Olbreeze. I'm the owner at 196 Hummock Pond Road. Thank you for taking the time to see me tonight in our request for a variance. So Jeff's office was hired to do our engineering for our septic system. We're requesting this variance due to the fact that we are over a compliance issue of a grade over the soil absorption system, I believe. The other components are complied. Everything else part of the system is in compliance. This came about, and I mean, we've been working on our house for a while, but originally the septic or the retaining wall was put in for Conservation Commission. We had to make sure we put that into the plan. That was one of the first boards we went to when we were designing the house. And we wanted to make sure that they would allow it because it was more of an architectural feature in my mind. And when I went to HTC, they didn't like the idea of it being in the house. So they preferred a sloping grade from the bike path up to the house. But what I didn't realize is the retaining wall kind of set a grade for Jeff to design a system to. And even though we had correspondence going back and forth, just kind of got missed. And our gentle sloping grade from the bike path up to the house created a non-compliance, I guess, issue with it being over that 36 inches. So I'm requesting a variance to that code regulation. We believe that changing it would actually may in fact cause more harm than good because the bike path would be higher than the soil absorption system. Because the house is sandwiched between the house and the bike path. So to try to get that, just to make that comply, we may in fact cause something that's more detrimental to the environment and public health. From what I understand, I did speak with Jeff's office, other engineers, Don Bracken's office, Dan Malloy and Steve Visco. They all believe that the system, it's a vented system. In no way does it not, I don't know what the terminology is, but that it still is going to be, the effect of the system is still good. That and this does not, the additional soil is not going to be affecting the system. So that's a good thing. That way, that's why I'm asking for a variance, because if by changing it just to comply, we may in fact be in a position where it wouldn't be as good. I sent this letter in, but let's make sure I haven't missed anything. I don't know if Jeff has anything else to add to this, but please do.
If I may, Jeff Blackwell, the point that Jason alluded to regarding regrading the site at this point in order to simply achieve the 36-inch maximum cover over the septic system would create a bowl on the property. And Title V is specifically requires that you maintain slopes over the leach field that allows water to shed away. So it's something of a the cure is worse than the ailment in this case. What the nonconformity amounts to, if you have a 36-inch cover limitation over a system, in this case, the excess fill varies from as little as 6 inches up to a maximum of 15 inches more fill over the system. The cover limitation in Title V is not explained. We can only surmise that there's a desire to maintain a level of oxygen in the leach field that will allow further bacterial treatment of effluent that enters the field before the effluent eventually meets the groundwater some 5 to 6 feet down. But in this case, in many cases, leach fields are vented to the atmosphere, and that venting follows all the way back to the stack in the house, just like plumbing is required to be vented. So, oxygenation of this leach field is assured in that way. So an equivalent standard of public protection or public health is maintained because of the presence of oxygen. So I think that the situation is unique enough, or can be conditioned in a way that does not create a precedent, because there was it was another board that required removal of the retaining wall, and the unintended consequence was that it would create a sloping, more grade over, or more fill over the leach field. All the other components are less than 36 feet of cover over, so it's the one component of the system that does not comply with this number that's within Title V. I'll answer any other questions.
I get some questions. Was the sewer line coming through the house going to the septic system, was that put in the way it's supposed to, so many inches per foot, or did they come out and then drop down into the septic tank?
In all other regards, the system is installed exactly as it was designed.
The system was installed the way it's supposed to be, and it was approved, and now they're dumping all the stuff on top of it. So my question is, the system was put in right. In other words, when it comes through the wall, being a plumber my whole life, it gets pitched so many inches or so many part of an inch per foot as it goes into the tank. And that part of it was done correctly?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
This, I think we had this a couple months ago where we're like the end of other people's bad decisions. And, between the HDC and Concom, and then when it comes to us to say, well, they screwed up, will you guys fix it? It's frustrating to kind of be dealing with something that actually is kind of a simple thing that probably could have been solved much earlier had the other entities paid more attention to all the regulations. Is there an architectural way to lower the soil? If you're gonna, would there be a way with design elements to make it so it doesn't look too stupid? I'm running out of words on that one, but it's just, I understand the concern, but it's just, I'm assuming that scientists and engineers came up with 36 inches for a really, I'm assuming a solid reason for the effectiveness of the system to work, that it wasn't necessarily just a number that they picked. 51 is, you know, a decent amount extra yardage of material over it. Is there an impact from that? And, you know, that's why, is there really an impact from doing this? Because obviously designs were made with specific, I'm assuming, on research and effectiveness of the system.
Just one point of clarification, we're between 6 inches and 15 inches in excess of the 36-inch amount of cover. It's not 51.
It's
Right, yeah, it's 51 is where, 36 is what is ideal, 51 is where you want to be?
Yeah, yes, 51 is where it is at the most excess cover.
Okay.
the difference being 6 to 15 inches over the 36, right? Is that right, Jeff?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not much, and that's why that's why we're asking about it. I realize it's new construction, and of course, I'd love to get everything right the first time. We've made a mistake here, and that's it happens. Building, lots of mistakes happen in codes and regulations, and we try to fix it if we can. We just believe fixing it in this case is somewhat unjust. I just feel like I don't know, it might make this situation worse. I do know, I had asked Jeff about it. I know when you're fixing an old system, you're allowed to go more than 36 inches. So in an old system that you're repairing, a septic system, you can go up to 72 inches. So, and that, I realize is not an old system that we're repairing, where this is a new system. And ideally it'd be just done right from the first time, but it's not. So I don't believe there's an environmental harm or health risk. And I wish it was done right from the beginning too. I certainly could have, if we had known. I mean, I personally didn't know there was this hard line of 36 over the system components. You know, in my own self-education over the last few weeks since this came to my attention, I spoke with landscapers, I spoke with Steve Visca from this board, I spoke with other engineers, and I've learned a lot, read the code a lot, and I know it now, so it doesn't help me here in hindsight. But I believe that if I had known, we could have done it. Now, Jeff could attest to the fact that all along the way we were communicating about Conservation Commission and HDC and zoning. I wanted to get it right from the beginning. I would double check with him 100 times about everything. And if I knew this was a very important aspect of the compliance, I would have brought it to his attention. So I'm a detail guy. I really am. And I didn't know this was a detail I had to be looking for. So.
Is this Title V? Is it Title V septic system?
Yes.
Does this ground cover affect the leaching area too?
Well, the excess of beyond 36 inches is only over the leach field. The tanks are all in compliance. It's just over the leach field that the 36-inch cover standard is
So the 36-inch covers the septic tank and the leach field.
All components are subject to a 36-inch maximum cover unless you're fixing, you're in a situation of local upgrade approval where you have a facility or house that was installed in a septic system. It was installed before the current version of Title V. Title V changes every 15, 20 to 30 years. So if you're fixing something that's broken, they let you have more than 36 inches of cover with a vent. Again, this idea of maintaining oxygen in the treatment system. We're in a new construction situation, so we're not in a local upgrade approval, fixing something that was broken.
Yeah, I have a comment. So 12 inches and, with 36 inches of fill on top would be 33%. And they have between 6 and 15 inches of extra fill on certain parts of the soil absorption system. It's new construction and it doesn't meet Title V requirements.
I just, and I'm respectfully asking this question, but all of these plans and things have to be approved before you even touch the dirt, correct? I haven't built a house, so I'm asking. So if all of this has to be been approved and you knew the retaining wall, I guess I'm confused, and somebody dug the hole for the septic and the leach field. When you started putting dirt back on, it wasn't noted that there was too much or that things were, like it, I'm just confused. This seems like this is something that so I have a septic system. Septic systems are put in all over the island, so it's not, and I am not a septic expert by any means. I'm just curious because it seems like this has happened other times on the island. So how does this sort of thing occur?
With the question she's asking is, why does it have to be 36 inches of dirt?
Well, I think your question is, in the process, how did this happen? So,
And you're not alone. I feel like we've talked about
Yeah.
this with
Yeah.
other people. That's why
I
I'm
didn't
like,
know.
how
I
does
had no
this keep
idea.
And the
happening?
septic system is designed on the plan, a wall was shown. And the wall set the grade closer to the house, but then there was a 2-foot drop shown in part of the design to establish the grade over the leach field. It's all contingent on this 2-foot vertical drop. Well, when the wall was eliminated at some point, which was, there was no landscape grading plan created to account for what becomes a sloping situation. So the slope created more fill over the system. It was not, it was missed.
Yeah, well, essentially, they put, this was addressed in the original plan, and then when the retaining wall, it was just like, we'll just dump dirt there. I mean, the thought that put the wall there was totally erased, and they just created a slope. I mean, again, that sounds more like I'm not, I guess, in responding to the HDC's request to make it smooth.
Yeah, so I was unaware, so I hired an engineer to design the system, and I hired Holgate Partners to install the system. They're the professionals, and I saw the plan. I'd seen it. I don't want to say it's gibberish. It's like jargon to me. It's something that you hire professionals to do. I hired Holgate's to install it, which they did almost to a T. I was unaware that the grade established by the retaining wall in our Conservation Commission application was used to develop the system. So I was unaware of that fact. So when it was removed, it wasn't like a red flag, like, oh, this was used to make the septic system establish grades for it. And if I had, I would have notified Jeff right away. I notified him that things have changed and we're doing things differently. Like he said, the wall was removed for HTC's purposes. They didn't want to see a wall. So the common sense thing to do was to grade it in a nice grade right from the bike path at elevation 20.6 up to the front of the house, which is at elevation 22. Straight line kind of elevation, essentially one point to the other. This is the scenario that we ended up with. Now, if we had known, to your point earlier, now Jeff comes back to, I guess, do an as-built survey. They do that. They take measurements to make sure it's built exactly the way it was supposed to. If it's in variance, they let you know that. At that point, they can't take grades because it's not backfilled, I guess. Then Holgate's comes back in, they dump the dirt on it, they grade out the lot, but there's no like say, I guess, like when we're building the house, I have to get a foundation inspection, a framing inspection, a final inspection. There's always steps along the way. And any one of those times, it's easy to like catch things and correct them. But in Title V, there's no schedule of inspections, right? The only thing they need to do is provide an as-built if it's varying from the plan. Right. And it's the only, they actually, if it's right to the plan, they don't have to do anything else. And that's it. Now, there are other components, compliance, I guess, things in Title V that need to be complied to, but there's no like requirement that, as far as I can see, there's not like an inspection after
Right.
it's
We
backfilled.
can move on,
Yeah.
because I mean, it's happened. We have to deal with
Yeah.
what's here now.
Yeah,
So we can talk forever about what happened. Let's decide on
Sure.
what we're going to do here.
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
What happens if we make you take the dirt off? Let's say you've got to take 15 inches of dirt off. What happens?
Well, I alluded to this earlier in that what that does is kind of creates a bowl or a low area over the leach field. And it's an area where rainwater events will concentrate water over a leaching field. And the purpose of a leaching field is not to deal with rain runoff stormwater. It's intended to only deal with septic effluent.
Yeah, it seems
So-
like we're making another problem.
That's where you may say that the cure is worse than the ailment.
Okay.
But couldn't you grade the whole, and I haven't seen what the yard looks, but like, couldn't you grade the whole area and not just over the leach, and then that would fix the problem, or
Well,
no?
you'd be pushing the grading out, basically all the way to the bike path and all the way to the east and the west.
and the bike path is actually higher than the maximum allowed cover. It's anywhere from 20.6 to 21.7 in elevation, I believe. So you can't change the bike path. That's for sure. You know.
That's not an option either. All right.
I have a very simple question. We can't put the retaining wall back?
I don't know if that's a simple question. It's just, yes, you'd have to require an HEC approval, and they are the ones who actually requested we removed it to begin with. And that does require that approval.
But you could go back and say it conflicts with another regulation.
I think you could do that.
And theirs is more of an aesthetic thing, not a specific written out title regulation.
I'd like to make a comment. The retaining wall that was on the approved plan was removed from the scope of work after the plan was approved.
All right. Any other suggestions, and then we'll move on with a vote one way or the other. Very quiet today. Okay.
So we could put the retaining wall back. I think is what you just said, right? That it was,
An application could be submitted
I-
to another board.
I personally don't think that is a viable solution, because you're still left with the bike path being higher than the maximum soil that's allowed over the system, over the leach field.
So
So there'd be you'd have to step down into we have the bike path runs along Hummock Pond Road, and this leach field is lower than the bike path. The bike path is obviously, there's a slight grade as it goes up the road. And so I can't change that. I can try to change the grade over the system, but I just don't believe, I think we were fighting with things that we can't, there's certain things we can't change. Even if we put in a retaining wall and make the grade sloping, you're still going to hit something at another wall. We'd have to make another retaining wall at the bike path to retain that grade.
Some retaining walls have water barriers for that reason.
Okay. And let's comment here, one more from our
Is-
engineer, and then we'll move on.
So is the only real viable option redoing the septic so it complies? Is that, or is that not an option at this point, I
There
guess?
would be a significant amount of site grading, potentially including adding a 50-foot retaining wall along the house in order to recreate the grades that were shown on the septic system design plan.
No, but couldn't the septic just be reinstalled, but installed correctly and not, because it sounds like it's too deep, correct?
Well, no, we would have to introduce a pump system into the overall design if you raise the leach field.
Well, it sounds like the original plan was compliant. I mean, that's kind of what I think we're saying. If the- you know,
Is there
had the
any
original
way-
plan been
is there any
done,
way you could
it was
take the top of the septic tank off, add 15 inches of block or concrete around that, put the top back in, and then the whole thing goes away?
No, because the angle.
No, I think it'd be
that's the problem.
a situation of removing soil, which is, the concern is you create a depression over the area of the leach field where water could be directed during storm events.
It's not the tank, it's the leach field. That's the issue.
Okay. Wise men and ladies.
Well, if it's not the tank, and it's a leach field, that makes the problem like 1/10 of the problem. It's not like you have to take the whole system apart. All you gotta do is redo the leach field. Am I right?
That's the biggest part of, that's the largest component of the septic system. It's a large, it's a large area. A tank is maybe 6 by 10.
Right.
The leach field is something like 30 by 20. 600 square feet.
So exactly what fixes the problem?
Less soil over the leach field would fix.
To comply.
It's cover problem, but it's also creating potentially another problem with stormwater directly over the system, leach field. So that's an undesirable.
That's undesirable consequence of following the rules.
So it wasn't designed well from the beginning.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go back to the beginning.
Go there.
Let's go there.
I mean,
We could talk forever
Yeah.
that we should have done that, or should have done that. That's it.
Yeah.
We're stuck with this. So we have to stuck with a decision here.
If I can make one last.
2 minutes, you've
point.
got once,
Yep.
if you're going to add something else,
Hmm?
you can speak, but if it's the same thing we've talked
Oh,
about.
I just want to say, listen, thank you for your time, and I just wanted to reiterate that the additional soil over the absorption system is not affecting in our environment or the public health, as the engineers have stated. It's vented, and a mistake was made, and I apologize for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
So may I have a motion one way or another for this?
No, make a motion to deny the variance.
Do I hear a second?
What was the motion?
He's denying the variance.
A motion to deny.
If we don't have a second, the variance is not denied.
No, wait a minute. I think I.
What is the recommendation of the health department, did you say?
Theirs is deny.
I have to read them, most likely.
Second it. Okay, all in favor of denying the variance, say aye.
Aye.
I vote no. So it's 4-1, and
Vote.
you didn't vote.
Thank you for your consideration.
Wait,
I didn't, I was just gonna abstain because I
okay.
just don't know the right answer.
311.
I don't know the right answer either, frankly, but it's 3-1 and 1 abstention. The variance is denied.
I know it doesn't say director's report, but I'm gonna take a director's prerogative.
Yeah, and I have to go.
Um, so it's a little bittersweet. After 8.5 years, this is my last meeting.
This is your last,
We're expecting a baby.
I know that, but if it was your last meeting, I would have done something different here.
Yeah.
Can you come back to a meeting?
I'll
Maybe not in March.
with a 1 week old in March 21st.
Maybe in like April or May.
I can
I mean,
come
we
back.
need to give you a more personal and official send-off.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
My last day with the town is on June 7th.
so we'll get you in May.
So I can stop by the May meeting.
We'll stop.
John will be running the meetings in my absence until they find a new director. I know that the position will be advertised within the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm working with Human Resources right now to update the job description. So the target is 2 to 3 weeks. But yeah, I go out on leave in early March.
Okay, well, at least you'll be on the island. I was afraid
Yes.
you were going to leave us completely. So we can call you as a consultant and ask you about leach fields and.
I will put in my consultant's fee.
I hope we get a good rate.
Yes.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
we all had a good run at it.
Yeah,
Anyways, you did a great job.
We
it's
did.
been,
When we come back in May, we'll do it.
Okay.
We'll send you.
Proper send-off.
We'll give you a
Okay.
proper
I'll-
send-off.
We'll praise you properly.
okay.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are
Aye.
adjourned.